Makina Reed's life ended at 11:56 p.m. One text, one mistake, one moment she could never take back. And by the time the sun came up, 2 billionaire men would be standing at her door. Have you ever sent a message to the wrong person? The kind that made your heart stop the second you realized what you'd done. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Makina didn't mean for any of this to happen. She was just tired, exhausted really. Her shift at Sterling Heights Hotel had been brutal. 12 hours of scrubbing floors, changing sheets, and pretending she didn't hear wealthy guests snap their fingers at her like she wasn't human. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and her heart? That was the worst part. Because earlier that day she'd seen the Instagram post. Her ex-boyfriend Marcus, the one who swore he'd marry her someday, was now engaged. To the woman he cheated with. The same woman Makina caught him texting late at night. The same woman he said was just a friend. So yeah, Makina was done pretending she was fine. She sat on the edge of her bed in her tiny apartment, staring at her phone. The room was barely big enough for a twin bed and a small table. But it was hers. At least she had that. She opened her messages and found her best friend Tasha's name. She needed to vent. She needed to say all the messy, emotional, unfiltered things she'd been holding in all day. Her fingers moved fast across the screen. Girl? Those billionaire twins in the penthouse today? If even one of them said hello, I'd forget my own name, and the things I want them to do to me. Let me stop before God humbles me. She hit send. Then she leaned back and closed her eyes, letting out a long breath. At least Tasha would laugh. At least someone would make her feel better tonight. But then her phone buzzed. Makina opened her eyes and looked at the screen. Her stomach dropped. The message didn't go to Tasha. It went to a contact she barely remembered saving months ago. Sterling Group contact. Emergency only. Her bosses. Her billionaire bosses. Makina's breath caught in her throat. Her hands started shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. No. No, no, no. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. She'd wake up any second now and none of this would have happened. But then the screen lit up again. A new message. Who is this? Explain. Now. Makina's heart slammed against her ribs. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Her vision blurred as panic flooded her entire body. What was she supposed to say? How could she explain this? There was no explanation. There was no excuse. She'd just sent the most embarrassing, inappropriate message of her life to the two men who could fire her with a single phone call. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she couldn't type. What words could possibly fix this? Then another message came through. We're coming to you tonight. Makina's blood turned to ice. She stared at the words, reading them over and over, hoping she'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. They were coming. To her apartment. Tonight. She stood up too fast and stumbled, her legs weak beneath her. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Why would they come to her? What did they want? Were they going to fire her in person, humiliate her, call the police? Her mind spiraled out of control, each thought worse than the last. And then she heard it. Footsteps, in the hallway outside her door, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Makina's heart stopped completely. Someone was right outside. Across the city, inside a black SUV parked under dim streetlights, two men sat in complete silence. Luca Sterling held his phone in one hand, staring at the message on the screen. His twin brother Leon sat beside him, reading the same words over his shoulder. Neither of them spoke at first. The message was still glowing between them like a live grenade. Girl, those billionaire twins in the penthouse today? If even one of them said hello, I'd forget my own name. And the things I want them to do to me. Let me stop before God humbles me. Luca's jaw tightened. Leon leaned back against the seat, eyes narrowed. Finally, Leon broke the silence. This wasn't for us. Luca didn't look up, but someone wanted us to see it. The twins shared one emergency contact number. It was a habit from childhood, back when danger followed them everywhere. Anyone who texted that number reached both brothers instantly. It was meant for life or death situations. Not this. Leon scrolled up through the message thread, checking the details. Then he stopped. His finger hovered over the timestamp. Luca, look at this. Luca leaned in closer. The message was sent at 11:56 p.m., but the metadata showed it was created at 11:53 p.m., 3 minutes before the sender supposedly typed it. Luca's eyes darkened. That's impossible, Leon's voice dropped, unless someone hacked her phone. Luca set his phone down slowly, processing what that meant. Someone had accessed this woman's messages. Someone had sent that text to them on purpose. But why? Leon pulled up another screen and ran a quick search on the sender's contact information. Within seconds, a name appeared. McKenna Reed. Leon stared at the name, then his expression shifted. Recognition flickered across his face. Wait, I know her. Luca looked at him sharply. You know her? Leon nodded slowly. She's the maid from last month, the one who helped us. Luca's memory clicked into place. The accident. The one they'd kept quiet. The night their car was run off the road by someone who knew exactly where they'd be. They'd stumbled into a hotel lobby, bleeding and disoriented, and a young black woman in a maid uniform had stayed calm. She'd brought them towels, called for help, and never asked questions. She didn't take pictures, didn't call the press, didn't treat them like billionaires. She just helped. Luca exhaled. That was her? Leon nodded. Yeah, McKenna Reed. For a moment, both brothers sat in silence, remembering that night. Most people would have sold that story to the tabloids for $100,000, but McKenna never said a word. And now someone was using her phone to get their attention. Luca's voice turned cold. Someone's targeting her, Leon agreed, and they wanted us to know about it. Luca reached for his seat belt. Then we go to her. Now. Leon didn't argue. He started the engine and the SUV pulled away from the curb, tires rolling smoothly over wet pavement. The city blurred past them as they drove through empty streets. McKenna's address was already loaded into the GPS, 15 minutes away. But neither twin noticed the motorcycle that had been idling in the shadows behind them. Its headlight flicked on. The rider revved the engine once, then pulled onto the road, keeping a careful distance. Leon glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes caught the faint glow of the motorcycle's taillight, weaving through traffic 2 cars back. We've got a tail, Leon said quietly. Luca turned his head slightly. How long? Since we left the office. Luca's expression hardened. Lose them. Leon shifted gears and took a sharp right turn down a narrow side street. The SUV accelerated smoothly, but the motorcycle stayed with them, cutting through the gap between 2 parked cars like it knew exactly where they were going. Luca cursed under his breath. They're not following us. They're heading to the same place. Leon's grip tightened on the wheel. Then we get there first. He pressed the gas harder, and the SUV surged forward, racing through the dark streets toward McKenna's neighborhood. But behind them, the motorcycle rider pulled out a phone, snapped a picture of their license plate, and sent it to someone. Then the rider sped up, not to follow them, to beat them there. McKenna's apartment had never felt this small before. The walls seemed to close in on her as she paced back and forth, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. The footsteps in the hallway had stopped, but that only made it worse. The silence was suffocating. She pressed her back against the door, listening. Nothing. Maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. Maybe no one was actually coming. But then headlights swept across her window. McKenna's heart dropped into her stomach. She moved to the window and peeked through the thin curtain, keeping herself hidden in the shadows. A black SUV sat parked on the street below. Expensive. Clean. The kind of car that didn't belong in her neighborhood. Her breathing quickened. This was real. They were really here. Makina backed away from the window, her mind racing. What did they want? Why would billionaire men drive across the city in the middle of the night just to confront a maid? She wasn't important. She wasn't anyone. She was just a woman who'd sent a stupid, embarrassing text by mistake, but they didn't know it was a mistake. They thought she'd done it on purpose. Makina covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. No one knew she was in danger. No one knew what was happening to her right now. If something went wrong, if these men decided to hurt her, who would even know? Her best friend Tasha was asleep. Her neighbors never checked on her. She was completely alone. Have you ever been in a situation where no one knew you needed help? Where you realized that if something happened, no one would even notice? That's how Makina felt right now. Invisible, forgotten, alone. Then came the knock. Firm, steady, controlled. Makina jumped, her whole body going rigid. A deep voice came from the other side of the door. Makina. She recognized it immediately. Luca Sterling. Another voice followed, smoother but just as commanding. Open the door. Leon Sterling. Makina's hand moved toward the lock, then stopped. Her instinct screamed at her. Something about this felt wrong. Why would they come here in person? Why not just fire her over the phone? Why show up at her door in the middle of the night like this? Then her phone buzzed in her hand. Makina looked down at the screen. A new message. Unknown number. Don't open the door. They're not who you think they are. Makina's blood went cold. Her eyes darted between the message and the door. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it in her ears. Who sent this? How did they know the twins were here? How did they know what was happening right now? Another knock came, gentler this time. Makina, Luca said softly. Please, we're not here to hurt you. Leon's voice was calm but urgent. We just need to talk. Makina stared at the lock, her hand trembling. She didn't know what to do. If she opened the door, she might be walking into a trap. But if she didn't, what would happen? Would they break in? Would they call the police? Would they ruin her life? Her phone buzzed again. If you open that door, you won't survive the night. Makina's breath hitched. Two choices, two consequences. Neither felt safe. She pressed her forehead against the door, tears streaming down her face. Why was this happening to her? All she'd done was make one mistake. One stupid, careless mistake. And now her entire life was falling apart. The twins were still waiting on the other side. The anonymous warning was still glowing on her phone. Makina's fingers hovered over the lock. She had to choose. Now. With a trembling hand, she reached for the deadbolt and slowly turned it. The lock clicked. She pulled the door open just a crack. Two tall silhouettes stood under the dim hallway light. Luca Sterling, his face calm but tense. Leon Sterling, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Their presence was overwhelming. They were too big for this tiny hallway, too powerful for this run-down building. Makina swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry about the message. Luca raised a hand gently. We're not angry. Leon studied her closely, his gaze intense. We're here because something isn't right. Makina blinked, confusion flooding her face. What do you mean? Leon pulled out his phone and held it up so she could see the screen. The timestamp on your message. You weren't holding your phone when it was sent. Makina stared at the screen, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. What? I was crying? I remember typing it? No, Luca said gently but firmly. Someone accessed your phone remotely. Makina stepped back, her legs suddenly weak. The room tilted. Who would do that? Leon exchanged a tense look with his twin brother. That's what we need to find out. Before Makina could respond, a loud crash echoed from down the hallway. Something heavy. Something wrong. All three of them froze. Luca's hand shot out and grabbed Makina's wrist. His voice was low and deadly serious. We're not alone. The hallway went dead silent. Makina's breath caught in her throat. Luca's grip on her wrist tightened, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to keep her from moving. Leon stepped inside her apartment and gently closed the door behind him, his movements smooth and controlled. He didn't say a word. He just lowered the lights and moved to the window, scanning the street below with sharp, calculating eyes. Makina stood frozen between them, her heart hammering in her chest. Please, she whispered. Please, just tell me what's going on. Luca turned to face her, his expression serious but not unkind. We need you to stay calm. Leon didn't take his eyes off the window. Someone's been watching you. Makina felt her knees weaken. Watching me? Why? I'm nobody. I'm just a maid. Leon finally looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that scared her more than anger ever could. Concern. You're not nobody, he said quietly. Not to the people who hacked your phone. Makina shook her head, trying to process his words. None of this made sense. Why would anyone care about her? Why would anyone go through the trouble of hacking her phone just to send a message to 2 billionaires? Luca reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. He opened the message thread and held it up so she could see. Look at the timestamp, he said. Makina leaned in closer, squinting at the screen. The message she'd sent was marked 11:56 p.m., but underneath it, in smaller text, was another time. 11:53 p.m. Makina's brow furrowed. I don't understand. What does that mean? Leon stepped away from the window and stood beside his brother. It means the message was created 3 minutes before you typed it. Makina's stomach dropped. That's impossible. Luca nodded. Exactly. Unless someone remotely accessed your phone and pre-scheduled the message to send at that exact time. Makina's mind spun. She thought back to earlier that night. She'd been crying. She'd been upset about Marcus and his engagement. She'd grabbed her phone and typed out her emotions without thinking. She remembered hitting send. She remembered the moment of relief before the panic set in. But if what they were saying was true, then someone had been inside her phone before she even touched it. Someone had planned this. Why? Makina whispered, her voice breaking. Why would someone do that? Leon's jaw tightened. Because they wanted us to come here tonight. Makina looked between the two brothers, fear creeping up her spine. To do what? To hurt me? Luca shook his head. No. To deliver you. Makina's breath stopped. Deliver me? To who? Leon didn't answer right away. He exchanged a look with his twin, and in that brief moment of silence, Makina saw something she hadn't expected. Guilt. Before either of them could speak, another sound echoed through the building. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the stairwell at the end of the hall. Leon moved instantly, positioning himself between Makina and the door. Luca pulled her back, his hand steady on her shoulder. Stay behind me, Luca said quietly. Makina's whole body trembled. Who is it? Leon didn't answer. He just kept his eyes locked on the door. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Then they stopped. Right outside her door, Makina covered her mouth to keep from screaming. The doorknob began to rattle. Not a knock, not a twist. A rattle. Like someone was testing the lock, checking to see if it was secure. Leon raised a hand, signaling for everyone to stay silent. Makina could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She could feel Luca's steady presence beside her, grounding her even though she wanted to run. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the rattling stopped. The footsteps retreated, slowly, calmly, like whoever it was had all the time in the world. Leon waited a full minute before moving. He pulled out a small device from his jacket and pressed a button. A faint beep sounded, and he checked the screen. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Luca asked. Leon looked at him, then at McKenna. "Someone jammed the building cameras, every single one." McKenna felt the blood drain from her face. "What does that mean?" Luca answered for him, his voice low and grim. "It means whoever was just outside your door didn't want to be seen." McKenna sank into the nearest chair, her legs finally giving out. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. She wasn't supposed to be part of this world. She cleaned hotel rooms. She paid her rent late. She ate dollar store ramen 3 nights a week. She wasn't important enough to be hunted. But Leon crouched down in front of her, his eyes steady and serious. "McKenna, listen to me. This isn't random. Whoever sent that text knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted us here tonight because they knew we'd protect you." McKenna's voice cracked. "Protect me from what?" Leon hesitated, and then he said the words that shattered everything she thought she knew. "From our father." "Your father?" McKenna repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Leon nodded slowly, his expression heavy with something that looked like regret. McKenna shook her head, trying to make sense of his words. "I don't understand. I've never even met your father. Why would he want to hurt me?" Luca moved closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Because he thinks you have something that belongs to him." McKenna's confusion deepened. "I don't have anything. I work at a hotel. I can barely afford rent. What could I possibly have that a billionaire would want?" Leon reached into his coat again, but this time he didn't pull out a phone or a device. He pulled out something small and worn, a photograph. Old, creased, faded from years of being held. He held it out to her. McKenna's hands trembled as she took it. She looked down at the image and her entire world stopped. The woman in the photograph was young, beautiful, smiling. She wore a simple dress and held a baby in her arms, a baby wrapped in a soft pink blanket. McKenna's breath caught in her throat, because the woman in the picture was her mother, and the baby in her arms was her. McKenna's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Luca hadn't caught her arm and steadied her. Tears blurred her vision as she stared at the photograph, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped it. "How did you get this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Leon's voice softened. "Our father gave it to us." McKenna looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "That's impossible. My mother never worked for your family. She never mentioned you." She did," Luca interrupted gently. "She worked for our father a long time ago, before you were born." McKenna shook her head violently, refusing to believe it. "No, my mother was a kind woman. She wouldn't have stolen anything from anyone." Leon crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes. "We believe you, McKenna, but our father doesn't." McKenna felt her chest cave in. "Why? What does he think she took?" Luca's jaw tightened. "We don't know. He never told us. All he said was that your mother disappeared with something important to him. Something he's been searching for ever since." McKenna clutched the photograph to her chest, her whole body shaking. "My mother died when I was 12. She didn't leave me anything except memories and this tiny apartment." Leon's voice was quiet but steady. "Are you sure about that?" McKenna froze. Her mind raced back through the years. Her mother had been sick for a long time before she passed. The last few months had been a blur of hospital visits and sleepless nights. But there was one thing McKenna remembered clearly. one moment that had always felt strange. A week before her mother died, she'd given McKenna a small wooden box. She'd told her to keep it hidden, to never open it, to protect it until the right moment. McKenna had been 12 years old. She didn't understand what her mother meant. She'd assumed it was just sentimental items, letters, pictures, things her mother wanted her to have one day, but she'd never opened it. Not once in all these years. Leon watched her closely, reading the shift in her expression. "McKenna, what did you just remember?" McKenna's voice came out as barely a whisper. "There's a box, under my bed. My mother told me never to open it." Have you ever discovered something about your family that completely changed how you saw them? A secret they kept to protect you, even if it hurt? McKenna felt that weight now. The weight of secrets her mother had carried alone. The weight of a past she'd never been allowed to understand. Luca moved toward her bedroom. "Show us." McKenna stood on shaky legs and led them to the small room. Her bed was pushed against the wall, barely big enough for one person. She knelt down and reached underneath, her fingers brushing against dust and forgotten things until they found the box. She pulled it out. It was smaller than she remembered. Wooden, carved with delicate flowers along the edges. Her mother's handwriting was etched into the bottom in faded ink. For McKenna. McKenna stared at the box, her hands trembling. She'd carried this thing with her through every move, every struggle, every hard night. And she'd never once opened it. Leon knelt beside her. "Whatever's inside, we'll face it together." McKenna looked at him, then at Luca. These two men were strangers. She'd only met them minutes ago, but in this moment they felt like the only people in the world who understood what she was going through. She took a deep breath and slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a single item, a flash drive, black, unmarked, cold to the touch. McKenna lifted it out of the box, holding it up to the light. "My mother hid this?" Leon's face went pale. "That's what he's been looking for." Luca stepped closer, his voice tight. "McKenna, do you have any idea what could be on that?" McKenna shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "No, she never told me. She just said to protect it." Leon reached for the drive, then stopped himself. "Whatever's on there, it's dangerous. Dangerous enough that our father has spent years hunting for it." Before anyone could say another word, the lights in the apartment flickered. Once, twice. Then they went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. McKenna gasped, her heart slamming against her ribs. Luca grabbed her hand. "Don't move." Leon pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to scan the room. But before he could say anything, they all heard it. The sound of the front door unlocking. From the outside, someone had a key. The doorknob twisted slowly from the outside. McKenna covered her mouth to keep from screaming. Her whole body went rigid, frozen in place by pure terror. In the darkness, she could barely see anything except the faint glow of Leon's phone and the shadow of the door beginning to move. Luca pulled her behind him, his body becoming a shield between her and whatever was coming through that door. Leon moved, silently toward the entrance, his movements controlled and precise. The door stopped. The lock clicked, but it didn't open. Instead, the doorknob rattled violently, metal scraping against metal. Slow, deliberate, like whoever was on the other side was testing how secure it was. McKenna pressed herself against the wall, clutching the flash drive so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But Luca's hand on her shoulder kept her grounded. Leon pulled out the small device he'd used earlier and checked the screen. His jaw clenched. "They jammed everything," he whispered. "Every camera in this building, every security system. We're completely blind." McKenna's heart felt like it was going to explode. "Who would do that?" Luca's voice was low and dangerous. Someone who doesn't want witnesses. The rattling stopped. The hallway went silent again. McKenna held her breath, listening, waiting, praying that whoever was out there had given up and left. But then she heard it. Footsteps. Retreating. Slowly. Calmly. Like whoever it was had all the time in the world. Leon waited a full minute before moving. He pressed his ear against the door, listening for any sign of movement. When he was satisfied, he turned back to McKenna and Luca. They're gone. For now. McKenna sank into a chair, her legs finally giving out. This can't be real. This can't be happening to me. Luca knelt beside her. McKenna, I know this is overwhelming, but we need you to stay strong. McKenna looked at him, tears streaming down her face. Why me? I've never done anything to your father. I've never even met him. Why is he doing this? Leon answered, his voice heavy. Because he believes your mother stole something from him. Something dangerous. Something valuable, and he thinks she passed it to you. McKenna held up the flash drive, her hand shaking. This? He's willing to terrorize me over this tiny piece of plastic? Leon's expression darkened. Men like our father don't chase small things, McKenna. Whatever's on that drive, it's worth more than money. It's worth more than his empire. McKenna felt a tear slide down her cheek. Then why didn't my mother just tell me? Why didn't she explain what this was? Luca's voice softened. Because she knew if she wrote anything down, if she left any kind of trail, he would find you. McKenna's chest tightened. Her mother had protected her. Even in death, she'd tried to keep her safe. But the secret she'd hidden had finally caught up. Leon moved to the window, scanning the street below. We need to move. Soon. If they know we're here, they'll come back with more men. McKenna's voice cracked. Where am I supposed to go? This is my home. This is all I have. Luca placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll protect you. I promise. McKenna wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust these two strangers who'd shown up at her door in the middle of the night. But trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. McKenna looked down at the screen, and her blood went cold. A new message, from a name she had never seen before, but a name the twins clearly recognized, Elias Sterling. Leon's face drained of color. How did he get your number? McKenna's hands trembled as she opened the message. The words appeared on the screen, cold and calculated. Hello, McKenna. I've been waiting a long time to meet you. Your mother would understand why. Tell my sons to step aside. You belong to me tonight. McKenna's heart stopped. Luca read the message over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. He found her. Leon paced the room, tension radiating off him like heat. This is worse than we thought. He's not just hunting her, he's claiming her. McKenna looked up at them, her voice breaking. What does he want with me? I don't understand any of this. Leon stopped pacing and looked her directly in the eyes. He doesn't just want the drive, McKenna. He wants you. McKenna shook her head, refusing to believe it. But why? I'm nobody. You're not nobody, Luca interrupted. Not to him. Before McKenna could ask what he meant, another message came through. This time it was a photo, a picture of her apartment building, taken from across the street, right now. Leon cursed under his breath. He's already here. Luca grabbed McKenna's arm. We need to leave. Now. But before they could move, the power in the entire building shut off. Complete darkness swallowed them whole, and from somewhere deep in the building a voice echoed through the hallway. Calm, cold, chilling. McKenna read, Time's up. The voice echoed through the building like a death sentence. McKenna read, Time's up. McKenna's entire body went numb. She couldn't move. couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The voice was calm, almost polite, but there was something underneath it, something cold and inhuman. Leon grabbed her arm. "We're leaving. Right now." Luca moved to the window, checking the fire escape. "This way. Go." But McKenna was frozen in place, staring at her phone, at the message still glowing on the screen, at the words that had shattered what little safety she had left. "You belong to me tonight." Luca turned back and saw her standing there, paralyzed. He moved to her side and gently took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "McKenna, listen to me. We will not let him take you. But you have to move. Now." His voice cut through the fog in her mind. She nodded, her hand still clutching the flash drive like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Leon pushed the window open, cold air rushing into the apartment. "Fire escape. Let's go." They climbed out one by one, the metal stairs creaking under their weight. McKenna's legs felt like they were going to give out with every step, but Luca stayed close behind her, his hand on her back, steadying her. Below them, the street was eerily empty. No cars, no people. Just the glow of streetlights and the distant hum of the city. They made it to the alley behind the building, and Leon pulled out his phone to call for backup. But before he could dial, McKenna's voice stopped him. "Wait." Both brothers turned to her. McKenna's mind was racing. Something wasn't adding up. The message, the photograph, the voice in the building, it all felt too coordinated, too planned. "How did he know I had the drive?" McKenna whispered. Leon frowned. "What do you mean?" McKenna looked down at the small black device in her hand. "I just found this 10 minutes ago. I've had it my whole life and never opened the box. So how does your father know I have it?" Luca's expression darkened. "Because someone's been watching you. For a long time." McKenna's stomach twisted. "You think someone's been in my apartment?" Leon nodded slowly. "It's the only explanation. They've been waiting for the right moment, waiting for us to show up, waiting for you to find it." McKenna felt sick. The idea that someone had been in her home, watching her, tracking her every move, made her skin crawl. She thought about all the nights she'd slept alone in that tiny apartment. All the times she'd felt safe. All the times she'd been wrong. Luca's voice was quiet but firm. "Your mother knew this day would come. That's why she hid it. That's why she told you to protect it." McKenna's eyes filled with tears. "She never explained why. She just said to keep it safe, to never open it until the right moment. Have you ever realized too late that someone you loved was protecting you from something you didn't even know existed? That they carried a burden alone just so you wouldn't have to?" That's what McKenna felt now. Her mother had spent her last days knowing that one day, this would all come crashing down. And she'd done everything she could to keep McKenna safe, even if it meant leaving her in the dark. Leon stepped closer. "McKenna, whatever's on that drive, it's the key to everything. It's the reason your mother ran. It's the reason our father has been hunting you, and it's the only thing that can stop him." McKenna looked up at him, her voice shaking. "Stop him from what?" Luca answered. "From destroying everything and everyone who knows the truth." McKenna's breath hitched. "What truth?" Before either twin could respond, headlights swept across the alley. A black car pulled up at the end of the street, blocking their escape route. The engine idled. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, older, well-dressed. His hair was silver, his posture perfect, and his face calm. He looked like a businessman, a grandfather, someone you'd trust. But the moment McKenna saw him, every instinct in her body screamed danger. This was Elias Sterling. He smiled, not a warm smile, not a kind smile, a smile that said he'd already won. "McKenna Reed," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "You look just like her." McKenna's throat closed. Just like who? Elias tilted his head. Your mother, of course. McKenna felt her knees weaken. Leon stepped between them, his voice hard. Stay away from her. Elias ignored him, his eyes locked on McKenna. She was a remarkable woman, smart, beautiful, loyal, until she betrayed me. McKenna shook her head. My mother wasn't a thief. Elias chuckled softly. I never said she was a thief, McKenna. I said she was a traitor. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Luca moved forward, his voice sharp. You don't get to talk about her. Elias finally looked at his sons, and for the first time, something cold flickered across his face. You two have always been too sentimental, just like your mother. McKenna's heart pounded. What do you want from me? Elias smiled again. I want what your mother took from me. I want what's mine. McKenna held up the flash drive. This? You've ruined my life over this? Elias's smile faded. That drive contains proof of who I really am, proof of what I've built, proof of every lie I've ever told. And your mother was going to use it to destroy me. McKenna's voice cracked. Then why didn't she? Elias stepped closer. Because I made her a deal. She could run, she could hide, she could live, as long as she never came back, as long as she never told you the truth. McKenna felt her world tilt. What truth? Elias looked her directly in the eyes. That I'm your father, too. McKenna's world stopped. The words hung in the air like poison. That I'm your father, too. Her legs gave out. She would have collapsed completely if Luca hadn't caught her. Her mind spun violently, trying to process what Elias had just said, trying to make it make sense, trying to find a way for it not to be true. But deep down, somewhere she didn't want to look, it fit. The photograph, her mother's silence, the years of running, the secrets, it all fit. Leon stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. You're lying. Elias smiled coldly. Am I? Look at her, Leon. Really look at her. She has my eyes, my mother's cheekbones, the same stubborn jaw you and your brother inherited. McKenna shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. No, you're lying. My mother would have told me. Elias's expression softened, but it wasn't kindness. It was pity. Your mother didn't tell you because she was ashamed of what we were, ashamed of what I made her. McKenna felt bile rise in her throat. Stop talking. But Elias continued, his voice calm and relentless. She was my assistant. Young, beautiful, brilliant. And I was married. When she found out she was pregnant, she begged me to leave my wife. But I couldn't. I had too much to lose. Luca's voice cracked with rage. So you threw her away? Elias turned to his son. I gave her money. I gave her options. She chose to disappear. McKenna's voice broke. She chose to protect me from you. Elias's smile faded. Perhaps, but in the end it didn't matter. Because here you are, right where you were always meant to be. McKenna clutched the flash drive tighter. I will never be yours. Elias's eyes darkened. You already are, McKenna. You're a Sterling, whether you like it or not. Leon grabbed McKenna's arm. We're leaving, now. But before they could move, more headlights appeared. 3 more black cars pulled into the alley, blocking every exit. Elias raised a hand and men stepped out of the vehicles. 6 of them, all dressed in dark suits, all moving with military precision. McKenna's heart slammed against her ribs. What are you doing? Elias's voice was calm. Taking back what's mine. Leon positioned himself in front of McKenna. You'll have to go through us first. Elias sighed. If you insist. He nodded once, and the men moved forward. Luca grabbed McKenna's hand. Run. They bolted down the alley, but the men were faster. One of them cut them off, grabbing Makina's arm. She screamed and fought back, kicking and clawing, but his grip was iron. Luca tackled him, and they crashed to the ground. Leon threw a punch at another man, but there were too many of them. Makina stumbled backward, clutching the flash drive, her mind racing. She had to get away. She had to protect this. She had to. A hand grabbed her from behind. She screamed and spun around, but it wasn't one of Elias's men. It was a woman, older, black, with kind eyes and a fierce expression. "Come with me if you want to live," the woman whispered. Makina didn't know who she was, didn't know if she could trust her, but in that moment she didn't have a choice. She let the woman pull her into the shadows, away from the fight, away from Elias, away from everything. Behind her, she heard Leon shout her name, but she didn't stop. She ran, and the woman ran with her, guiding her through a maze of back streets and dark alleys until they reached an old sedan parked 2 blocks away. The woman shoved Makina into the passenger seat and started the engine. "Who are you?" Makina gasped. The woman's voice was steady. "Someone your mother trusted." Makina's breath caught. "You knew my mother?" The woman nodded, pulling onto the street. "I was there the night she ran. I helped her hide. And I've been watching you ever since." Makina felt tears blur her vision. "Why didn't you tell me?" The woman's voice softened. "Because your mother made me promise not to. She said you'd be safer if you didn't know." Makina looked down at the flash drive in her hand. "What's on this?" The woman's jaw tightened. "The truth. About Elias Sterling. About what he did. About who he really is." Makina's voice cracked. "And who am I?" The woman glanced at her, and for the first time, Makina saw something like regret in her eyes. "You're the key to bringing him down." Before Makina could respond, the woman's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, and her face went pale. "What is it?" Makina asked. The woman's voice was barely a whisper. "They found us." Makina looked out the back window and saw headlights. Multiple cars. All of them, moving fast. The woman pressed the gas harder. "Hold on." The car surged forward, weaving through traffic. Makina gripped the door handle, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would burst. Behind them, the cars were gaining. The woman cursed under her breath and took a sharp turn down a narrow street. The sedan skidded, tires screeching, but she kept control. Makina looked back again. The cars were still there, still coming. And then, in the rearview mirror, Makina saw him. Elias Sterling, sitting in the back of the lead car, watching her, smiling. The sedan flew through the streets, tires screaming with every turn. Makina gripped the door handle so hard her knuckles turned white. Behind them, Elias' cars were gaining ground, their headlights cutting through the darkness like predators' eyes. The woman driving didn't slow down. She took another sharp turn, nearly clipping a parked car, and shot down a narrow side street. "Who are you?" Makina shouted over the roar of the engine. "Grace," the woman said, her eyes locked on the road. "I was your mother's best friend." Makina's breath caught. "My mother never mentioned you." Grace's jaw tightened. "That's because she was protecting me too." Before Makina could ask more, Grace slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop in front of an abandoned warehouse. She threw open her door and pulled Makina out. "We can't outrun them in the car. We go on foot." Makina stumbled after her, still clutching the flash drive. They ran through the warehouse entrance, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Rusted metal beams hung from the ceiling. Broken glass crunched under their feet. Behind them, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Footsteps pounded closer. Grace pulled Makina behind a stack of old crates. They crouched low, both breathing hard. Makina's heart hammered in her chest. Her lungs burned. Her legs shook. She'd never been so terrified in her entire life. And the worst part? No one knew where she was. No one was coming to save her. Her best friend was asleep. Her neighbors didn't care. The twins were gone, fighting Elias's men back in the alley. She was completely alone. Have you ever felt like the world forgot you existed? Like if something happened to you, no one would even notice until it was too late? That's how Makina felt now. Invisible. Forgotten. Hunted. Grace peeked around the crate, then pulled back quickly. They're spreading out, searching. Makina's voice shook. How far will he go? How far will Elias go to get this drive? Grace looked at her, and the answer in her eyes was worse than words. As far as he needs to. Makina felt her stomach drop. He'll kill me. Grace didn't deny it. He'll kill anyone who stands in his way. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. Makina pressed her back against the crate, trying to slow her breathing. Then why are you helping me? You could have just walked away. Grace's expression softened. Because your mother was my sister in every way that mattered, and I made her a promise. I told her I'd protect you if anything ever happened to her. Makina felt tears slide down her cheeks. She knew he'd come for me. Grace nodded. She knew. That's why she hid the drive. That's why she made you promise never to open the box. Makina looked down at the small black device in her hand. What's on it? Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. Everything. Financial records. Illegal deals. Names of people he's destroyed. Proof of crimes that could put him away for life. Makina's breath hitched. My mother had this the whole time? Grace nodded. She was going to expose him. But he found out. And he threatened you. Makina's chest tightened. So she ran. Grace's voice cracked. She chose you over justice. She chose your life over the truth. Makina wiped her tears, a new emotion rising inside her. Anger. Then I'm going to finish what she started. Grace stared at her. Makina, you don't understand what you're up against. Elias Sterling owns half this city. Judges, cops, politicians. If you go public with that drive, he'll bury you. Makina's voice was steady for the first time all night. Then I'll bury him first. Before Grace could respond, footsteps echoed nearby. Close. Too close. Grace grabbed Makina's arm and pulled her toward a back exit. They slipped through the door just as men entered the warehouse behind them. They ran into another alley, this one darker and narrower than the last. The city felt like a maze. Every corner looked the same. Every shadow hid danger. Makina's legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she didn't stop. Grace led her through a series of back streets until they reached an old fire escape. Up, now! They climbed the rusty ladder, each step groaning under their weight. Makina didn't dare look down. She just kept moving. They reached the rooftop and collapsed, both gasping for air. Grace checked her phone. The twins are alive, they got away. Makina felt a wave of relief. Where are they? Grace's expression darkened. They're coming for you. But so is Elias. Makina's heart sank. How much time do we have? Grace didn't answer. She just stared at something behind Makina. Makina turned slowly. A man stood on the opposite side of the rooftop. Tall, silent, holding a gun. Grace moved in front of Makina. Run. But before Makina could move, the man spoke. She's not going anywhere. And then he raised the gun. Not at Makina. At Grace. The shot echoed across the rooftop. Grace collapsed. Makina screamed. Makina's scream tore through the night air. Grace crumpled to the ground, clutching her shoulder. Blood seeped through her fingers, dark and spreading fast. The gunman stepped forward, his face emotionless, cold, mechanical. Makina dropped to her knees beside Grace. No, no, no. Stay with me, please. Grace's voice was weak but urgent. Run, Makina, run. But Makina couldn't move, couldn't leave her. This woman had protected her, had risked everything for her, and now she was bleeding out on a rooftop because of it. The gunman raised his weapon again, this time aimed at Makina. She closed her eyes, bracing for the end, but the shot never came. Instead, she heard a crash, a grunt, the sound of bodies colliding. Makina opened her eyes and saw Leon tackling the gunman to the ground. They struggled, wrestling for control of the weapon. Luca appeared behind them, pulling Makina to her feet. "We have to go. Now." Makina shook her head. "Grace is hurt. We can't leave her." Luca glanced at Grace, then at the edge of the rooftop where more men were climbing up the fire escape. "We don't have time." Leon slammed the gunman's head against the concrete and grabbed the weapon. He ran to Grace, checking her wound. "She'll live. But not if we stay here." He lifted Grace with surprising ease, throwing her arm over his shoulder. "Move." They ran across the rooftop and jumped to the next building. The gap was narrow, but terrifying. Makina's heart stopped as she leaped, her feet barely clearing the edge. Behind them, Elias's men reached the rooftop and opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off metal vents and brick walls. Makina ducked, her ears ringing from the noise. Luca pulled her down another fire escape, and they hit the street running. Leon was right behind them, still carrying Grace. They ducked into a narrow alley between two buildings. The walls were so close Makina could touch both sides at once. Leon set Grace down gently against the wall. She was conscious, but pale, her breathing shallow. Makina knelt beside her. "You're going to be okay. I promise." Grace managed a weak smile. "You're a terrible liar." Luca checked the street behind them. "We need to keep moving. They'll sweep this area." But Leon was already working on something. He pulled out a small tool from his jacket and started picking the lock on a metal door embedded in the alley wall. Makina watched him, her mind still reeling. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" Leon didn't stop working. "Because it's the right thing to do." Makina shook her head. "That's not an answer. You don't even know me. You could have walked away. You could have let him take me and saved yourselves." The lock clicked. Leon pushed the door open, revealing a dark storage room filled with old crates and dusty shelves. He turned to face Makina, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his eyes. Something broken. "Because we know what it feels like to be hunted by the man who claims to love you." Makina's breath caught. Luca's voice was quiet. "Our father destroyed our mother, piece by piece, day by day, until there was nothing left of her." Leon's jaw tightened. "And we stood by and did nothing because we were too young to understand, too scared to fight back." Makina felt tears sting her eyes. "I'm sorry." Leon shook his head. "Don't be sorry. Just survive. That's all we want." They helped Grace inside the storage room and closed the door behind them. The space was small and cramped, but it was shelter, for now. Luca used his phone's flashlight to check Grace's wound. It went through. "She needs a hospital," Grace groaned. "No hospitals. He owns half the doctors in this city." Luca cursed under his breath. "Then we patch you up here." He ripped a piece of fabric from his shirt and pressed it against her shoulder. Grace winced but didn't cry out. Makina sat against the wall, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Her entire body ached. Her mind felt like it was splitting in two. She looked down at the flash drive still clutched in her hand. This tiny piece of plastic had cost her everything, her safety, her home, her sense of reality, and now it had almost cost Grace her life. Leon sat beside her. "Are you okay?" Makina let out a bitter laugh. "Am I okay? My life is over. My apartment is destroyed. I just found out a billionaire psychopath is my father, and the woman who tried to save me just got shot. So no, I'm not okay." Leon didn't argue. He just sat with her in the silence. After a long moment, Makina spoke again. "What happens now?" Leon's voice was steady. "Now we fight back." Makina looked at him. "How? He's too powerful. He owns everything, everyone." Luca answered from across the room. "Not everything. He doesn't own the truth." Makina stared at the flash drive. "You think this is enough to stop him?" Leon nodded. "If we use it right." Before Makina could respond, they heard footsteps outside the storage room. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Everyone froze. The door handle began to turn. Leon raised the gun. Luca positioned himself in front of Makina and Grace. The door creaked open, and a shadow stepped into the room. A voice spoke from the darkness. "You can't hide from me forever." It was Elias. Leon fired without hesitation. The shot echoed through the storage room, deafening in the small space. But when the smoke cleared, Elias wasn't there. It was one of his men. The man stumbled backward, clutching his leg, and collapsed in the doorway. "Go!" Leon shouted. Luca grabbed Makina's arm and pulled her toward a back exit she hadn't noticed before. Leon lifted Grace again, moving fast despite her weight. They burst through the back door into another alley. A black sedan was already waiting, engine running, door open. "Get in!" a voice shouted from the driver's seat. Makina didn't recognize the man, but Leon did. They piled into the car, and before the door even closed, the driver hit the gas. The sedan tore through the streets, weaving between cars, running red lights, moving with the kind of speed that told Makina this wasn't the driver's first escape. She looked back through the rear window. No one was following them. Not yet. Her hands were still shaking, her heart still pounding. She couldn't believe she was still alive. The driver took them across the city, away from the chaos, away from Elias until they reached the waterfront. He pulled up to an old brick building that looked abandoned from the outside. Leon opened the door. "We're here." They helped Grace out of the car and into the building. The driver sped off without a word. Inside, the building was nothing like Makina expected. From the outside, it looked like a ruin. But inside, it was fortified. Modern, secure. Cameras lined the walls, steel doors, reinforced windows, a safe house. Luca led them to a back room where he laid Grace down on a couch. He immediately went to work, cleaning and bandaging her wound properly. Makina stood in the middle of the room, still clutching the flash drive, still trying to process everything that had happened. Leon touched her shoulder gently. "You should sit." Makina shook her head. "I can't. If I sit, I'll break." Leon didn't push. He just stayed close. Makina looked around the safe house, taking in the security monitors, the weapons cabinet, the emergency supplies. "How long have you two been hiding from your father?" Luca glanced up from bandaging Grace. "We're not hiding from him." Leon's voice was quiet. "We've been preparing to fight him." Makina stared at them. "For how long?" Luca finished tying off the bandage. "Since we were old enough to understand what he really is." Makina felt a lump form in her throat. "And what is he?" Leon met her eyes. "A monster who wears a suit." The room went silent for a moment. Grace groaned softly from the couch. "That's the most accurate thing I've ever heard." Makina sank into a chair, exhaustion finally winning. "Why didn't you just leave? Go somewhere he couldn't find you?" Luca's expression hardened. "Because running doesn't stop him. It just delays the inevitable." Leon added, "And we couldn't leave knowing there were others he'd hurt." Makina looked at them both. These two men. Strangers hours ago. Now the only people standing between her and death. When was the last time someone put their life on the line for you? Not because they had to, not because they owed you, but because it was the right thing to do? That's what the twins were doing, and Makina couldn't understand why. "Why me?" she whispered. You don't even know me. I'm just a maid. I'm nobody." Leon crouched in front of her. "You're not nobody, Makina. You're the daughter of a woman who stood up to him. You're the keeper of the only evidence that can destroy him. And you're our sister." Makina's breath caught. "I'm still trying to process that part." Luca smiled sadly. "So are we." Grace coughed from the couch. "You three need to figure out what you're going to do with that drive, because Elias won't stop until he gets it, or until you're all dead." Makina looked down at the small black device in her hand. "What if we give it to the police?" Leon shook his head. "He owns half the department. They'll bury it," Luca added. "We need to go public, media, press, make it impossible for him to hide." Makina's stomach twisted. "And if that doesn't work?" Leon's voice was grim. "Then we use it as leverage." Before Makina could ask what he meant, a tsiu loud alarm blared through the safe house. Red lights flashed across the walls. Leon ran to the security panel. Someone breached the perimeter. Luca pulled a gun from the weapons cabinet. "How many?" Leon checked the monitors. His face went pale. "Too many." Makina felt her heart drop. "He found us." Leon's jaw tightened. "No, this is worse." He turned the monitor so Makina could see. The screen showed the street outside the safe house, but it wasn't Elias's men surrounding the building. It was the police. Dozens of them. Armed. Ready. Makina's voice shook. "Why are the police here?" Leon's expression darkened. "Because Elias just reported us for kidnapping you." "Kidnapping?" Makina's voice cracked. "I came with you willingly. You saved my life." Leon's expression was grim. "Doesn't matter. He controls the narrative. And right now, the story is that two men broke into your apartment and took you by force." Luca cursed under his breath. "He's backing us into a corner. If we surrender, he gets the drive. If we run, we look guilty." Makina felt the walls closing in. "So what do we do?" Leon looked at the monitors again. The police were setting up a perimeter. Spotlights swept across the building. A voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is the Seattle Police Department. We have the building surrounded. Send out Makina Reed unharmed and we can resolve this peacefully." Makina stood up, her decision made. "I'll go out there. I'll tell them the truth." Leon grabbed her arm. "You can't. The moment you step outside, Elias will have you. He'll claim you're confused, traumatized. He'll paint himself as the concerned father trying to save his daughter." Makina's voice broke. "Then what's the point? If he controls everything, how do we win?" Grace spoke from the couch, her voice weak but steady. "You don't win by playing his game. You win by exposing the game itself." Makina looked at her. "What does that mean?" Luca's eyes lit up. "The drive. We don't just give it to the authorities. We release it to everyone." Leon caught on. "Live. Public. Streaming. Make it impossible to cover up." Makina's heart raced. "You mean put it online?" Leon nodded. "Every news outlet, every social media platform, every device in this city, we flood the world with the truth before he can stop it." Grace smiled weakly. "Your mother would be proud." Makina felt tears sting her eyes. "She spent her whole life running from this, and now I'm supposed to face it head on?" Luca's voice was gentle. "You're not facing it alone." Leon handed her a laptop. "But we need to do it now, before they breach the building." Makina stared at the flash drive in her hand. This tiny piece of plastic held the power to destroy the man who'd terrorized her mother, the man who'd hunted her, the man who claimed to be her father, but it also held the power to destroy her own life in the process. She looked at Leon and Luca. "What happens to us after this? After the truth comes out?" Leon's voice was honest. "We'll probably lose everything. His lawyers will fight. His allies will turn on us. But we'll be free." Makina thought about her mother, about the years she'd spent hiding, about the sacrifice she'd made to keep Makina safe. She thought about Grace, bleeding on the couch, still fighting. She thought about the twins who'd risked their lives for a woman they barely knew, and she made her choice. Let's do it. Leon opened the laptop and plugged in the flash drive. Files appeared on the screen, hundreds of them, financial records, audio recordings, video evidence, emails, contracts. Makina's breath caught. This is everything. Luca scanned through the files. It's more than everything. This isn't just fraud. This is murder, blackmail, corruption at the highest levels. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. Your mother was going to bring down an empire. Makina's hands trembled as she prepared to upload the files. How did she even get all this? Leon answered, his voice heavy. She was his assistant. She had access to everything, and she was smart enough to copy it before she ran. Makina looked at the screen, at her mother's legacy, at the truth that had cost so much. She took a deep breath and clicked upload. The files began transferring. Progress bar slowly filling. 10%. 20%. Outside, the police megaphone boomed again. This is your final warning. Send out Makina Reed, or we will enter by force. 30%. Luca checked the security monitors. They're preparing to breach. 2 minutes, maybe less. Makina watched the screen, willing it to go faster. 40%. Grace coughed. Makina, whatever happens, know that your mother loved you. Everything she did was to protect you. 50%. Makina's voice cracked. I know. 60%. Leon's phone buzzed. He checked it and his face went pale. What is it? Luca asked. Leon showed him the screen. Luca's expression darkened. Makina's stomach twisted. What's wrong? Leon turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Fear. Elias just sent a message. He's offering the police a deal. He'll withdraw the kidnapping charges if they hand you over to him directly. Makina felt the blood drain from her face. Can they do that? Luca's voice was grim. If he's paying the right people, they'll do whatever he wants. 70%. The sound of heavy boots echoed outside, shouting, commands, 80%. Leon moved to the door, gun raised. They're coming. 90%. Makina stared at the screen, praying it would finish. 95%. A loud bang echoed from the front of the building, the sound of a battering ram hitting the steel door. 98%. Another bang. The door groaned under the pressure. 99%. The door burst open, and the upload completed. 100%. Makina looked at Leon. It's done. Leon smiled. Then we've already won. But before anyone could celebrate, the lights in the safe house cut out. Complete darkness. And a voice spoke from the shadows. Not a police officer. Not one of Elias's men. A voice Makina recognized but couldn't place. You really thought it would be that easy? A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Makina's heart stopped as the light swept across the room, landing on her face. The man holding it stepped forward. Tall, built like a soldier. His face was blank, emotionless. The kind of face that had seen terrible things and felt nothing. Leon raised his gun. Don't move. The man didn't flinch. You can shoot me, but there are 20 more outside, and they won't hesitate. Luca positioned himself in front of Makina. Who are you? The man's voice was flat. I'm the person Mr. Sterling sends when things need to be handled quietly. Makina felt ice spread through her veins. This wasn't a cop. This wasn't one of Elias's regular men. This was something worse. A fixer. Grace groaned from the couch. Marcus Holt. I should have known he'd send you. The man glanced at Grace. You should have stayed out of this, Grace. You were always smarter than this. Grace coughed. Smart would have been letting him win. I chose brave instead. Marcus turned his attention back to McKenna. The drive has been uploaded, but Mr. Sterling has already begun damage control. By morning, every file will be labeled fake. Every witness discredited. Every journalist silenced. McKenna's voice shook. You can't erase the truth. Marcus tilted his head. You'd be surprised what money can erase. Leon's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance. Walk away. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I don't walk away. I finish the job. He raised his hand and suddenly the safe house was flooded with tactical lights. Armed men poured in through every entrance. Front door, back door, windows. Luca grabbed McKenna's arm. Tunnel. Now. Leon fired twice, forcing Marcus to dive for cover, then ran after them. Luca pulled open a hidden panel in the floor, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Go! McKenna didn't hesitate. She climbed down, her hands scraping against cold concrete. Leon and Luca followed, and Luca slammed the panel shut behind them. They were in a tunnel. Old. Damp. The kind of place that felt like a tomb. Leon pulled out his phone, using the light to guide them forward. This connects to the old sewer system. Comes out 6 blocks away. They moved quickly, water dripping from the ceiling, rats scurrying in the shadows. McKenna's lungs burned. Her legs felt like they would give out any second. Behind them, she heard the panel being ripped open. Footsteps echoing, voices shouting. They were being followed. McKenna stumbled, her foot catching on uneven ground. Luca caught her before she fell. I've got you. Keep moving. But McKenna couldn't. Her body was shutting down. Her mind was fracturing. She sank against the tunnel wall, tears streaming down her face. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm not built for this life. I'm just a maid. I clean hotel rooms. I don't run from killers. I don't fight billionaires. I don't... Leon crouched in front of her, his voice steady. Neither were we. McKenna looked up at him. What? Luca knelt beside her. We were just kids when we realized what our father was. We weren't built for this either. But we learned. We adapted. We survived. Leon's eyes softened. And so will you. Have you ever been pushed so far beyond your limits that you didn't think you could take another step? That moment when you're sure you're done, but somehow you keep going anyway? That's where McKenna was now. At the edge of breaking. At the edge of giving up. But she looked at Leon and Luca, and she saw something in their eyes that gave her strength. Belief. They believed she could do this. So maybe she could. McKenna wiped her tears and stood up. Okay, let's go. They ran through the tunnel until they reached a ladder leading up to a manhole cover. Leon climbed first, pushing it open just enough to peek outside. He froze. What is it? Luca whispered. Leon's voice was tight. We have a problem. McKenna's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Leon climbed the rest of the way up and helped McKenna out. She emerged onto a quiet street, the early morning sun just beginning to rise. And sitting right in front of them was a black car. Engine running. Rear window rolled down. Elias Sterling sat in the back seat, perfectly calm, perfectly composed, like he'd been waiting for hours. He smiled. Hello, McKenna. I've waited long enough. McKenna backed away, but men appeared from both ends of the street, surrounding them, trapping them. Elias stepped out of the car. You've caused quite a mess tonight, uploading that drive, turning my sons against me, shooting my men. McKenna's voice shook. You're a monster. Elias smiled wider. Perhaps, but I'm a monster who always gets what he wants. He held out his hand. Now. Give me the original drive, and I'll let your friends live. McKenna clutched her empty pocket. The drive was gone, used, uploaded. But Elias didn't know that. Leon stepped forward. She doesn't have it anymore. Elias's smile faded. Then where is it? Luca's voice was cold. Everywhere. Elias's face darkened. He pulled out his phone and made a call. After a moment, his expression shifted. Anger, disbelief, rage. He hung up and looked at McKenna with pure hatred. You just destroyed everything I built. McKenna lifted her chin. Good. Elias's hand moved to his coat. Leon shouted, Gun! But before anyone could react, a shot rang out. Not from Elias, from behind him. Elias stumbled forward, shock spreading across his face. He turned slowly, and standing there, holding a smoking gun, was someone McKenna never expected to see. Her best friend. Tasha. Tasha? McKenna's voice came out as barely a whisper. Her best friend stood there, gun still raised, face twisted with an emotion McKenna couldn't read. Not quite anger. Not quite fear. Something in between. Elias clutched his side where the bullet had grazed him. Blood seeped through his expensive suit, but he didn't fall. He just stared at Tasha with cold calculation. Well, Elias said calmly. This is unexpected. Tasha's hand shook, but her voice was steady. Step away from her. McKenna couldn't move, couldn't think. Tasha, what are you doing here? How did you— I've been following you all night, Tasha said, eyes never leaving Elias. Ever since you sent me that weird text about billionaire twins, I knew something was wrong. Leon stepped forward carefully. Lower the weapon. Let us handle this. But Tasha didn't lower it. I'm not letting anyone hurt my friend. Elias smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing McKenna had ever seen, because it wasn't the smile of a man who'd just been shot. It was the smile of a man who'd already won. You must be Tasha, Elias said, his voice smooth despite the pain. McKenna talks about you often. Best friends since high school, correct? Tasha's jaw tightened. Don't talk like you know us. Elias chuckled. But I do know you. Tasha Marie Collins, 26 years old. Works at a call center. 2 younger siblings. Mother works double shifts at a nursing home. Father left when you were 9. Tasha's face went pale. How do you— I know everything about everyone who matters to my daughter. The word daughter made McKenna's stomach turn. Elias continued, his tone conversational. I also know you're 3 months behind on rent, that your mother's medical bills are piling up, that your car was repossessed last week. Tasha's hands trembled. Shut up. Elias tilted his head. I'm simply stating facts, facts that could change very quickly with the right arrangement. Leon's voice was hard. Don't listen to him. That's what he does. He finds your weakness and uses it. But Elias ignored him, his eyes locked on Tasha. $50,000. Right now. All I ask is that you walk away. McKenna felt her heart crack. Tasha, no. Please. Tasha's eyes filled with tears. McKenna, you don't understand. My mom needs surgery. If I don't get the money— He's lying, Luca interrupted. He'll kill you the second you're not useful. Elias shrugged. Or I'll pay you. It's really up to you. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Tasha lowered the gun. McKenna felt the world tilt. Tasha. But Tasha didn't walk toward Elias. She walked toward McKenna and handed her the gun. I'm sorry, Tasha whispered. I'm sorry I even hesitated. But I'm not leaving you. McKenna grabbed her friend and pulled her into a tight hug. Thank you. Elias's smile finally faded. How disappointing. He snapped his fingers and car doors opened. 6 men stepped out. All armed. All moving with the same military precision as Marcus Holt's team. McKenna raised the gun, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. Elias straightened his jacket, ignoring the blood. McKenna, this is your last chance. Give me the drive, and I'll let everyone walk away." McKenna's voice was stronger than she felt. "I already told you. It's gone. Uploaded. The whole world knows what you are now." Elias's eyes darkened. "Then I suppose there's no reason to keep any of you alive?" Leon and Luca moved in front of McKenna and Tasha, forming a barrier. Leon's voice was cold. "You'd really kill your own sons?" Elias looked at them with something that might have been regret, but only for a second. "You stopped being my sons the moment you chose her over me." Luca's voice cracked. "We never had a choice. You made us choose." Elias sighed. "And you chose wrong." He raised his hand, ready to give the order. But before he could, sirens echoed in the distance. Real sirens. Not controlled by him. Leon smiled. "That's the FBI. Turns out when you upload evidence of federal crimes, they respond pretty quickly." Elias's face went rigid. "You're bluffing." Luca pulled out his phone, showing a screen full of messages. "We sent copies directly to federal prosecutors. Ones you don't own. Ones who've been waiting years for evidence like this." The sirens grew louder. Elias's men shifted nervously, looking at each other. Elias's calm mask finally cracked. Rage flooded his face. "You've destroyed everything." McKenna stepped forward, her voice steady. "No. You destroyed everything. Years ago. We just made sure people finally saw it." Elias stared at her, and for a moment McKenna saw something almost human in his eyes. Regret. Loss. Pain. But then it was gone, replaced by pure hatred. "If I'm going down," Elias said quietly, "I'm taking you with me." He lunged toward McKenna. Leon and Luca moved to stop him, but Elias was faster than he looked. His hand closed around McKenna's throat, and suddenly they were falling, backward, over the edge of the street, into the open manhole they'd just climbed out of. McKenna screamed as they plunged into darkness. McKenna hit the water hard. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Cold, dark, suffocating. She thrashed, trying to find the surface, but Elias's hand was still locked around her arm, dragging her down. Then suddenly the grip released. McKenna kicked upward and broke through the surface, gasping for air. She was in the old sewer tunnel, waist-deep in filthy water. Above her she heard Leon shouting, "McKenna!" A rope dropped down. McKenna grabbed it, and Leon and Luca pulled her up with strength that shouldn't have been possible. She collapsed on the street, coughing up water, her whole body shaking. "Where's Elias?" Luca asked, looking down into the manhole. Leon shone his phone light into the darkness. Nothing. Just water and shadows. "He's gone," Leon said. "Either swept away or—" Gunshots cracked through the air. Elias's men were firing, forcing them to scatter. Leon grabbed McKenna. "Run!" They sprinted down the street, Tasha right beside them. The early morning sun was rising, casting long shadows across the empty waterfront. Behind them, footsteps pounded, shouts echoed. More gunshots rang out. McKenna's lungs burned, her legs felt like they would give out. But she didn't stop. They cut through an alley, jumped a fence, and ran through a parking lot. McKenna screamed over the noise, "Why are you doing this? Why are you risking everything for me?" Luca shouted back, "Because he destroyed our mother too." McKenna stumbled, but Leon caught her. "What?" Leon's voice was tight with emotion. "Our mother tried to leave him, just like yours did, but she didn't have proof. She didn't have leverage, so he destroyed her, made her look unstable, took her credibility, her dignity, everything." Luca's voice cracked. "She died alone in a hospital, and the world thought she was crazy, but we knew the truth. We always knew." McKenna felt tears mix with the sweat on her face. These men weren't just helping her. They were avenging their own mother. When was the last time someone fought for you? Not because they had to, but because they understood your pain. Because they'd lived through something similar and refused to let it happen again? That's what the twins were doing. And it broke McKenna's heart and filled it at the same time. They reached an abandoned factory near the waterfront. Leon forced open a rusted door, and they all stumbled inside. The building was dark, cold, filled with old machinery and broken glass. Luca locked the door behind them. We have maybe 5 minutes before they find us. Tasha collapsed against a wall, breathing hard. What now? Leon pulled out a laptop from his bag. He'd been carrying it this whole time. Now we make sure the evidence sticks. McKenna frowned. But we already uploaded it. Leon nodded. The files, yes. But there's something else on that drive. Something your mother encrypted. Something even we couldn't access. He plugged in a backup copy of the flash drive he'd made earlier and started typing. McKenna watched the screen. Lines of code, encrypted folders, password prompts. What are you looking for? She asked. Leon's fingers flew across the keyboard. Your mother left a message, hidden in the deepest layer of encryption. It took me this long to crack it. The screen flickered. A folder appeared. Inside was a single document. Leon opened it, and McKenna's world stopped for the 3rd time that night. The document was a will, a legal will, dated 20 years ago, written by her mother, and it stated, clearly and legally, that in the event of Elias Sterling's criminal prosecution, all of his assets, all of his companies, all of his wealth would be transferred to his firstborn child. Not Leon, not Luca. McKenna. She was his oldest child, born before his marriage, before his empire, before everything. Leon's voice was quiet. McKenna, this drive doesn't just expose him. It names you as the rightful heir to everything Elias owns. McKenna couldn't breathe. That's impossible. I'm nobody. Luca's voice was gentle. You're the daughter of the woman he loved and betrayed, the daughter he tried to erase, and legally you own everything. McKenna stared at the screen, her mind refusing to accept what she was seeing. Billions of dollars, companies, properties, power, all of it hers. Tasha grabbed her hand. McKenna, do you understand what this means? McKenna shook her head. It means I'm the thing he's been trying to destroy this whole time. Not just the evidence. Me. Leon nodded. You were never just a witness. You were the threat. Before anyone could say more, the factory doors exploded inward. Not Elias's men this time. FBI agents in tactical gear, and leading them was someone McKenna recognized from the uploaded files. The federal prosecutor who'd been building a case against Elias for years. She stepped forward, her voice calm but authoritative. McKenna Reed? McKenna nodded, still in shock. The prosecutor smiled. You're safe now. And Elias Sterling is in custody. McKenna felt her knees buckle. He's alive. The prosecutor nodded. Barely, but alive, and he's going to prison for the rest of his life. McKenna should have felt relief, should have felt victory, but all she felt was empty. The prosecutor continued. We'll need your testimony, and we'll need to discuss the will your mother left behind. McKenna's voice was barely a whisper. I don't want his money. The prosecutor's expression softened. That's not a decision you have to make today. Leon placed a hand on McKenna's shoulder. You did it. You finished what your mother started. McKenna looked at him, tears streaming down her face. Then why doesn't it feel like winning? Before anyone could answer, a phone rang. The prosecutor's phone. She answered and her face went pale. She hung up and looked at McKenna with an expression that made her blood run cold. Elias Sterling just escaped custody. He's armed. And he's coming for you. He escaped? McKenna's voice barely worked. How is that possible? The prosecutor's face was grim. He had help. Someone inside. We're investigating, but right now, you need to get somewhere safe. Leon grabbed McKenna's arm. We're leaving. Now. But before they could move, The factory lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a sickly red glow. The FBI agents immediately went on alert, weapons drawn, scanning the darkness. Luca pulled McKenna and Tasha behind a stack of old machinery. "Stay down." The prosecutor barked orders into her radio. "We need backup at the waterfront factory. Suspect is armed and dangerous. I repeat, static." The radio went dead. Leon checked his phone. No signal. He's jamming everything. McKenna's heart pounded so hard she thought it would break through her ribs. "How does he keep finding us?" Luca's voice was tight. "Because he's had years to plan for this. Years to build resources. Years to buy loyalty." A voice echoed through the factory. Calm. Controlled. Coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Elias." "McKenna, I'm impressed. You've made it much further than I expected. Your mother would be proud." McKenna's hands shook. She wanted to scream back at him, but Leon covered her mouth and shook his head. Elias continued, his voice drifting through speakers McKenna hadn't noticed. "But this ends now. You've taken everything from me, my reputation, my empire, my freedom, so I'm going to take the one thing that matters to you." McKenna's blood went cold. "Your life." The FBI agent spread out, trying to locate the source of his voice, but the factory was massive, dark, full of places to hide. The prosecutor moved beside McKenna. "We're going to get you out of here." But McKenna shook her head. "No. This is what he wants. He wants me running, scared, broken, just like my mother." Leon looked at her. "What are you saying?" McKenna's voice steadied. "I'm saying I'm done running." Luca frowned. "McKenna, he'll kill you." McKenna met his eyes. "Then at least I'll die standing up." The prosecutor's voice was firm. "Absolutely not. You're a civilian. We handle this." But McKenna was already standing, stepping out from behind the machinery. Leon tried to grab her, but she pulled away. "Elias!" McKenna shouted into the darkness. "You want me? Here I am." The factory went silent. Even the FBI agents froze, staring at her. Then Elias's voice came again, closer this time. "Brave, just like your mother in the end." A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the factory. Elias Sterling, soaked, bleeding, but alive, and holding a gun. He walked toward her slowly, limping slightly. "Do you know what your mother's last words were?" McKenna's throat tightened. "Don't." Elias ignored her. She said, "Protect my daughter. Not herself. Not her own life. Just you." Tears burned McKenna's eyes. "Then why didn't you listen?" Elias stopped 20 feet away. "Because I couldn't. You were the evidence. You were the proof that I'd failed, that I'd loved someone I couldn't control." McKenna's voice cracked. "You didn't love her. You owned her." Elias's face twisted. "I gave her everything. You gave her prison." McKenna shot back. "A prison with money, and when she tried to escape, you hunted her down." Elias raised the gun. "And now I'm finishing what I started." FBI agents shouted, "Drop your weapon." But Elias didn't lower it. His finger moved to the trigger. Leon stepped in front of McKenna. "If you want her, you go through me." Luca stood beside his brother. "Through both of us." Elias stared at his sons, and for a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret, loss, pain, but then it hardened again. "So be it." He pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the factory. But it wasn't Leon or Luca who fell. It was Elias. He stumbled backward, shock spreading across his face. Behind him stood Grace, barely able to stand, her own gun smoking. She'd followed them, even wounded, even barely conscious. She'd come to finish this. Elias dropped to his knees, blood spreading across his chest. He looked up at McKenna, and his voice came out as a whisper. "You win." Then he collapsed. FBI agents rushed forward, surrounding him, checking for vitals. The prosecutor looked at Grace. "How did you—" Grace's legs gave out. Leon caught her before she hit the ground. McKenna knelt beside Elias, staring at the man who'd destroyed so many lives. His eyes were still open, still breathing. Barely. He looked at her one last time. "I'm sorry," he whispered. McKenna didn't know if he meant it, didn't know if monsters could feel remorse, but she nodded. "I know." Elias's eyes closed. Paramedics rushed in. The prosecutor barked orders. Chaos erupted around them, but McKenna just sat there, numb. It was over. Finally. Over. Tasha knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around her. "You did it. It's done." McKenna nodded, but she couldn't speak. Leon and Luca stood nearby, watching as paramedics loaded Elias onto a stretcher. The prosecutor approached McKenna. "He's alive. Barely. But he'll stand trial." McKenna looked up at her. "And the will?" The prosecutor's expression softened. "It's legal. Binding. Everything he owns is now yours." McKenna felt the weight of those words crush her. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his power. She just wanted her mother back. But that was the one thing she could never have. The prosecutor handed her a business card. "When you're ready, we'll talk. But for now, you're free to go." McKenna stood on shaky legs. Free. She was free. But as she turned to leave with Leon, Luca, Tasha, and Grace, her phone buzzed. One new message, from an unknown number. McKenna's stomach dropped. She opened it. "Congratulations on your inheritance, but you should know, your mother had one more secret, one she never told anyone, not even Grace. Call me when you're ready to know the truth. M.H." McKenna's hands shook. M.H. Marcus Holt. The fixer was still out there, and he knew something she didn't. McKenna stared at the message until the letters blurred. Marcus Holt, the fixer who'd hunted her through the streets, the man who worked for Elias without question or mercy, and he claimed to know a secret about her mother. Leon looked over her shoulder and read the message. His face darkened. "Don't respond. It's a trap." But McKenna couldn't look away from the screen. What if he's telling the truth? Luca shook his head. "He's a manipulator. That's what he does. He finds your weakness and exploits it." Tasha grabbed McKenna's hand. "After everything you've been through tonight, you really want to open that door?" McKenna didn't know. Her mind felt fractured. Her body felt like it was held together by adrenaline alone. But the words haunted her. One more secret. Grace's voice was weak from the stretcher nearby. "McKenna, don't." McKenna looked at her. "You know something, don't you?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. McKenna felt anger rise in her chest. "I'm so tired of secrets. I'm tired of people deciding what I should and shouldn't know about my own life." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Ms. Reed, I strongly advise against making contact with Marcus Holt. He's wanted for conspiracy, murder, and—" "I don't care," McKenna interrupted. "I need to know." Leon's voice was firm. "McKenna, think about what you're doing." But McKenna was already typing a response. What secret? She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came instantly. "Not over text. Meet me. Alone. Or you'll never know the truth about who you really are." An address followed. An old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The prosecutor grabbed McKenna's phone. "Absolutely not. This is a setup." But McKenna's mind was already made. "Then send agents with me. Surround the building. But I'm going." Leon stepped in front of her. "You don't have to do this." McKenna met his eyes. "Yes, I do. My whole life has been built on lies, on secrets, on things people decided I was better off not knowing. I'm done living like that. Have you ever reached a point where you'd rather face a painful truth than live with a comfortable lie? Where not knowing hurt more than knowing ever could, that's where Makina was, at the edge of everything, and she was ready to jump. The prosecutor sighed. Fine, but we do this my way. Full tactical support. You wear a wire, and at the first sign of danger, we pull you out. Makina nodded. 30 minutes later, she was in an FBI van heading toward the warehouse. Leon and Luca insisted on coming despite the prosecutor's protests. Tasha stayed behind with Grace, both under protection. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark, empty. Exactly the kind of place where bad things happened. The prosecutor handed Makina a small wire to clip inside her jacket. We'll hear everything. You're not alone. But as Makina stepped out of the van and walked toward the warehouse entrance, she'd never felt more alone in her life. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open. Inside, a single light hung from the ceiling, illuminating the center of the space. And standing beneath it was Marcus Holt. He looked different without his tactical gear, almost normal, like someone you'd pass on the street and never notice. You came, he said simply. Makina stopped 10 feet away. Tell me what you know. Marcus tilted his head. First, you need to understand something. I didn't work for Elias because I believed in him. I worked for him because I was paid to. Makina's voice was cold. You helped a monster destroy lives. Marcus didn't deny it. Yes, I did. And I'll have to live with that. But your mother? She was different. Makina's breath caught. You knew her? Marcus nodded. I was the one who helped her escape. The world tilted. Makina's voice came out as barely a whisper. What? Marcus stepped closer. Elias hired me to find her, to bring her back. But when I found her, when I saw what he'd done to her, I couldn't do it. So I helped her run. I gave her money. Fake IDs, a way out. Makina felt tears burn her eyes. Why would you do that? Marcus's voice softened. Because she reminded me of my sister, and I couldn't save my sister, but I could save her. Makina's legs felt weak. Then why are you telling me this now? Marcus's expression changed, became heavier. Because your mother made me promise something. If anything ever happened to her, I was supposed to find you and tell you the truth. Makina's heart pounded. What truth? Marcus reached into his coat. Outside, through the wire, Makina heard the prosecutor shout, He's reaching! Move in! But Marcus didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to Makina. She looked down at the image, and her entire world shattered for the final time. The photograph showed her mother, younger, smiling, standing next to a man. Not Elias, someone else. A man with kind eyes and a warm smile. And at the bottom, written in her mother's handwriting, Makina's real father, the man I truly loved. Makina's voice broke. Elias isn't my father? Marcus shook his head. No, he never was. The warehouse doors burst open. FBI agents flooded in. But Makina couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Everything she'd believed, everything she'd fought for, everything was a lie. Makina's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the photograph. This can't be real, she whispered. Marcus's voice was steady. It is. Your mother fell in love with a man named David Chen. He was a journalist, honest, kind, everything Elias wasn't. FBI agents surrounded them, weapons drawn, but they hesitated. The prosecutor held up a hand, listening through the wire. Makina's voice cracked. Then why did Elias claim me? Marcus's expression darkened. Because your real father was investigating him, getting too close to the truth. So Elias made him disappear. Makina felt her knees buckle. Leon, who'd been listening from outside, burst through the door and caught her. Makina. She pushed him away. No, I need to hear this. Marcus continued, his voice heavy. Your mother was already pregnant when David vanished. Elias convinced her he could protect her, that if she stayed with him, pretended you were his, you'd be safe. So she agreed, but the guilt destroyed her. Makina's tears flowed freely now. She lived a lie to protect me. Marcus nodded. And when she couldn't take it anymore, she grabbed the evidence and ran. She was going to expose him and tell you the truth, but she got sick before she could. The prosecutor stepped forward. Where's David Chen now? Marcus's jaw tightened. I don't know. Elias never told me, but I think he's still alive. McKenna's head snapped up. What? Elias never confirmed the kill. He just said the problem was handled. I think he's been keeping your father somewhere all these years. Leverage, insurance, something. McKenna's voice was barely audible. My father might be alive. Before Marcus could answer, the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed through the warehouse. Then an explosion ripped through the building next door, the one where Elias had been taken for medical treatment. Flames shot into the sky. The prosecutor screamed into her radio. What the hell was that? Static, then a panicked voice. The medical transport exploded. Sterling's gone. Luca's voice cut through the chaos. He rigged it. He planned this. Another explosion. Closer this time. Marcus grabbed McKenna's arm. This whole block is wired. He's going to blow it all. Leon pulled McKenna toward the exit. Move! They ran as the warehouse began to collapse behind them. Steel beams groaned. Concrete cracked. Fire spread like a living thing. McKenna's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she didn't stop. They burst through the exit just as the building imploded behind them. The force of the blast threw them forward. McKenna hit the pavement hard. The air knocked from her lungs. Leon covered her body with his, shielding her from falling debris. When the dust finally settled, McKenna looked up. The entire block was destroyed. Buildings collapsed, cars overturned, fires burning everywhere. The prosecutor stumbled toward them, bleeding from a cut on her forehead. Is everyone alive? Luca helped McKenna to her feet. We need to go. Now. But before they could move, McKenna heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Deliberate. She turned. And there, emerging from the smoke and flames like a ghost, was Elias Sterling. His suit was torn, his face covered in blood and ash. He limped heavily, one arm hanging useless at his side, but he was alive, and he was smiling. Did you really think it would be that easy? Elias said, his voice raspy but clear. The prosecutor raised her weapon. Don't move. But Elias ignored her. His eyes were locked on McKenna. You've taken everything from me, he said. My empire, my reputation, my sons. But you forgot one thing. McKenna's voice shook. What? Elias's smile widened. I always have a backup plan. He raised his hand and McKenna saw he was holding something. A phone. He pressed a button, and somewhere in the distance, another explosion echoed. The prosecutor's radio crackled. The hospital! The hospital where Grace and Tasha are. It just... The transmission cut off. McKenna screamed. No! Leon grabbed her before she could run. We don't know if they're hurt. We don't know... But McKenna wasn't listening. She tore free from his grip and lunged at Elias. She didn't have a weapon, didn't have a plan. She just had rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. She slammed into him and they both crashed to the ground. Elias laughed even as McKenna's fists connected with his face. There she is. There's the fighter. Just like your mother at the end. McKenna screamed and drove her knee into his chest. Elias gasped. The wind knocked out of him. But even then, he kept smiling. You want to know where your real father is? He wheezed. I'll tell you, because it won't matter anymore. McKenna froze, her fist raised. Elias coughed blood. He's alive, locked away, waiting. And if I die, he dies. That was always the plan. McKenna's voice broke. Where is he? Elias's eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Only I know. And if you want him to live, you'll let me go. FBI agents surrounded them, weapons aimed at Elias. The prosecutor's voice was hard. We don't negotiate with terrorists. But Elias wasn't talking to her. He was talking to McKenna. You have 10 seconds to decide. Let me walk away, or your father dies in whatever hole I've kept him in for the last 26 years. McKenna looked at Leon, at Luca, at the prosecutor. No one had an answer. Elias started counting. 10, 9, 8. McKenna's mind raced. If she let him go, he'd disappear. If she didn't, her father would die. 7, 6, 5. Her heart pounded. 4, 3. She thought of her mother, of everything she'd sacrificed. 2. McKenna closed her eyes and made her choice. 1. Shoot him, McKenna said. Elias blinked. What? McKenna stood up, backing away from him. I said shoot him. I'm not letting you hold my father hostage anymore. The prosecutor moved forward, weapon aimed. Sterling, you're under... But Elias laughed, a broken, desperate sound. You really think I'm bluffing? Your father dies. Tonight. Right now. Unless nothing, McKenna interrupted, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. You've controlled me my entire life without me even knowing it. You controlled my mother. You controlled Leon and Luca, but I'm done being afraid of you. Elias's face twisted with rage. You stupid girl. You're just like, my mother? McKenna finished. Good, because she was brave enough to run from you. And I'm brave enough to end this. She looked at the prosecutor. Take him into custody, now. But before the agents could move, Elias's expression changed. The rage melted, replaced by something worse. Sadness. You really don't know, do you? He said quietly. McKenna frowned. Know what? Elias looked at Leon and Luca. Did you boys really not tell her? Leon's face went pale. Don't. Luca's voice was panicked. Elias, please. But Elias ignored them. His eyes stayed locked on McKenna. The DNA test we ran, when you were born, before your mother ran. McKenna's stomach dropped. What DNA test? Elias smiled sadly. The one that proved David Chen wasn't your father either. The world stopped. McKenna couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. What are you saying? Elias's voice was soft, almost gentle. I'm saying Marcus lied to protect you. Your mother loved David, but you were never his child. McKenna shook her head violently. No, you're lying. You've lied about everything. I'm not lying about this, Elias said. Your mother and I were together before she ever met David. Before I married. Before my sons were born. You are my firstborn child, McKenna. You always have been. McKenna felt her knees give out. Leon caught her, but she couldn't feel his hands. Couldn't feel anything. No. She whispered. No, no, no. Elias stepped closer. Leon and Luca are your brothers. Your real brothers. That's why your mother ran. That's why she hid the truth, because she knew if you ever found out, you'd be pulled into this world forever. McKenna looked at Leon, at Luca, searching their faces for denial, but she found only guilt. You knew, she whispered. Leon's voice cracked. We found out 3 weeks ago, when our father started searching for you, when we saw the DNA reports from when you were born. Luca's eyes filled with tears. We wanted to tell you, but we didn't know how. McKenna felt her world shatter into a million pieces. Everything she'd believed, every truth she'd clung to, every piece of her identity, gone. She was Elias Sterling's daughter. She was Leon and Luca's sister. She was part of the family that had destroyed her mother. The irony was so cruel, it almost made her laugh. Elias held out his hand. Come home, McKenna. You're a Sterling. You always have been. Stop fighting what you are. McKenna stared at his outstretched hand, and something inside her broke. Not in a weak way, in a way that made her dangerous. She stood up, pulling away from Leon's support. Her voice came out cold, clear, final. I will never be yours. Elias's expression hardened. Then you'll die like your mother, alone, broken, refusing help until it's too late. McKenna smiled, and it was the most terrifying smile she'd ever worn. My mother wasn't broken. She was free, and so am I. Elias's face twisted with rage. He raised his hand, reaching into his coat. "Gun!" the prosecutor shouted. But before Elias could pull anything, a single gunshot cracked through the air. Everyone froze. Elias stumbled backward, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He looked down at the wound, shock spreading across his face. Then he looked up at the person who'd shot him. It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't Grace. It was Luca, his son. Luca's hands shook as he lowered the weapon he'd taken from a fallen agent. "You were going to kill her," Luca said, his voice breaking. "You were going to kill our sister." Elias stumbled to his knees. "Luca, I was protecting." "You weren't protecting anyone," Leon said, moving to stand beside his brother. "You never were." Elias collapsed onto the pavement, blood pooling beneath him. Paramedics rushed forward, but everyone could see it was bad. McKenna stood frozen, watching the man who'd terrorized her family finally fall. Elias looked up at her one last time. "I loved your mother," he whispered. "I really did." McKenna's voice was barely audible. "Then you shouldn't have destroyed her." Elias's eyes closed, and he stopped breathing. The prosecutor checked his pulse, then shook her head. "He's gone." Silence blanketed the scene. McKenna stood there, numb, staring at the body of her father. Her real father. The monster who'd shaped her entire life without her knowledge. Leon placed a hand on her shoulder. "McKenna." She turned to him, and he saw something in her eyes that made him stop. "I need to find my father," she said. "My real father. David Chen. If there's even a chance he's alive." Luca nodded. "Then we'll find him. Together." Before anyone could say more, the prosecutor's radio crackled. "We found them. Grace and Tasha are alive. The hospital wing they were in wasn't hit. Repeat, they're alive." McKenna felt something inside her chest finally let go. They were safe. It was over. Finally, over. But as paramedics covered Elias Sterling's body, McKenna's phone buzzed one final time. She looked down at the screen. A video message from Elias, time-stamped to send in the event of his death. Her hands shook as she pressed play. Elias's face appeared on the screen, calm and composed. "Hello, McKenna. If you're watching this, I'm already dead, and there's something you need to know. Your father, David Chen, is alive. I kept him alive all these years, not as punishment, but as insurance. He's in a place only I know, and if you want to find him, you'll have to solve one final puzzle I left behind. Consider it my last gift to you, or my last curse. You decide." The video ended, and the screen showed a single image. A location. Encrypted. Hidden. Waiting. McKenna looked at Leon and Luca. "It's not over," she whispered. 3 months later, McKenna stood in front of Sterling Industries headquarters. The sun was rising behind the glass towers, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A new beginning. But some battles never really end. McKenna had spent the past 3 months decrypting Elias's final message, solving puzzles he'd hidden in offshore accounts, coded documents, and encrypted files scattered across 3 continents. And finally, 2 days ago, she'd found it. The location where David Chen had been kept for 26 years. A private medical facility in upstate Washington. Hidden. Secured. Unknown to everyone except Elias and a handful of paid guards. When the FBI raided it, they found him. Alive. Older. Weak, but alive. McKenna had stood outside his room for 20 minutes before she could bring herself to go in. When she finally did, David Chen looked at her with tears streaming down his face. "You look just like your mother," he whispered. And McKenna had broken down completely. They'd talked for hours. About her mother. About the life he'd lost. About the daughter he'd never known. He told her stories about her mother that no one else knew. Her favorite song, her secret dream of opening a bookstore, the way she laughed when she was truly happy. And for the first time in her life, Makina felt like she knew who her mother really was. Not the scared woman who ran, not the victim who died too young, but the person, the whole complicated, beautiful person. David wasn't her biological father, but he'd loved her mother, and that was enough. Now, standing in front of Sterling Industries, Makina took a deep breath. The company was legally hers. Elias's will had been overturned by the courts. The evidence of his crimes made every legal document he'd ever signed questionable, and the original partnership agreement between him and Makina's mother was upheld, which meant everything Elias had built now belonged to Makina. She could sell it, destroy it, walk away, but she'd made a different choice. She was going to rebuild it, turn it into something that honored her mother's memory instead of destroying lives. Leon and Luca stood beside her, both dressed in suits, both looking nervous. "You ready?" Leon asked. Makina nodded. "Let's do this." They walked through the front doors together. Employees stared as they passed. Whispers followed them through the hallways. The board of directors was waiting in the conference room, 12 men and women who'd helped Elias build his empire of lies. Makina walked in and sat at the head of the table. "Good morning," she said calmly. "My name is Makina Reed Sterling, and as of today, I'm your new CEO." The room erupted into protests. "You're too young. You have no experience. This company will collapse." Makina raised a hand and the room went silent. "You're right. I'm young. I'm inexperienced, and I have no idea what I'm doing." She paused. "But I'm also the only person in this room who actually cares about the people this company has hurt, the families Elias destroyed, the lives he ruined, and I'm going to spend every single day making that right." She stood up. "Anyone who has a problem with that can leave. Now." 3 people stood and walked out. The rest stayed. Makina looked at Leon and Luca. They both nodded. This was just the beginning. After the meeting, Makina stood alone in Elias's old office. Now, her office. She looked out the window at the city below. So many people, so many stories, so many battles being fought in silence. Everyone's fighting something, aren't they? Some battle no one else can see. Some pain they carry alone, some truth they're too afraid to speak. Makina thought about her mother, about Grace, about Leon and Luca, about David Chen, about all the people who'd fought for her when she didn't even know she needed saving. She pulled out her phone and opened social media. The story had gone viral. Her story, her mother's story. The downfall of Elias Sterling. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people sharing their own stories of survival. Makina read through them, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't alone. None of them were. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "Coffee later? I have so much to tell you about my new job." "Yes, I finally quit the call center." Makina smiled and typed back. "Absolutely. I'll buy. Billionaire's treat." She was about to put her phone away when one more notification appeared. A message from an unknown number. Makina's heart stopped. She opened it. "Congratulations on your victory, Ms. Reed Sterling. But you should know, Elias wasn't the only one with secrets. Your mother's past goes deeper than you think. And there are others who know the truth. Others who won't be as easy to defeat. We're not the only ones who know who you really are. Prepare yourself. This is just the beginning." The message was followed by a single image, a photograph, of her mother, standing with 3 other people Makina didn't recognize, and written on the back, visible in the photo, "The 5 who knew too much." Makina's hands trembled. 5 people. Her mother was one. Elias was another. That left 3. 3 people who knew secrets even Elias had kept hidden. 3 people who were still out there, watching, waiting. Makina stared at the photograph, her mind racing. Her journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. She looked out at the city one more time. The sun was fully risen now. A new day, a new fight, and Makina Reed Sterling was ready. The end. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones we see coming. They're the ones hidden in the past, the secrets buried so deep we forget they exist, until they come knocking. Makina's story isn't over, and maybe yours isn't either. If this story moved you, share it, because someone out there needs to know they're not fighting alone.